much for talking with me today. I love seeing your growth. I love seeing all that you've done and all that you're doing right now, which is being an advocate and really helping people.
I mean, I hope so. I just so is this podcast.
Well,
and also you have been through quite the trajectory since we've known each other too. It's kind of interesting. I really love seeing all of my friends that I've had for a long period of time, certainly who knew me before television, because it's such an interesting arc to see where we've all wound up, especially because you and I are the same age. And this is a really interesting moment in life. And a lot of women that I know are sort of pivoting in a particular way, sort of the way we are. And I think that it's a fascinating moment. It's a very interesting moment to be. I mean, I don't use the term middle age pejoratively. It's like we're sort of in the middle of age, in this moment in time, in this technological revolution, in the moment of too much content and no clarity. It's a very weird time considering our backgrounds, and what we grew up understanding is sort of like completely smashed to smithereens.
Completely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I agree. It's fascinating. So what do you believe?
What do I believe? I believe all sorts of things, but what I really believe right now, and I think it's important to talk about this moment because we are in an unprecedented situation in the world. I believe that there is so much to be learned and so much that we can do during this time of collective grief and trauma. I think that coming out of this is not going to be easy. I think that our mental health has been really tested by this entire situation. I think that there is fear and there's anger and there's a lot of emotions that come up, especially when we've been in isolation and we don't have things to distract ourselves. But I keep thinking, well, what can we get out of this? What is the thing that could kind of not just save us from this situation, but at least kind of give more meaning and depth to this moment? And what I keep coming back to is this idea that everybody in the world is in the same position. We are all in this kind of universal reset that nobody in their lives has ever had the time to actually just take without worrying about, money, which I think is going to be an issue going forward, without being able to do anything to fix anything else except just stay where you are. And a lot of people will say, well, go deep. And yes, I believe go deep, work on yourself, whatever that means to you. But what I love is the idea that with this time, we could think about the way we want the world to be, not just for ourselves, which is the inner work that maybe a lot of us are kind of preoccupied with doing, but the work of what it would mean to see the whole world in a different light. And this is when we have this moment to kind of literally rethink all of the sort of processes, structures, infrastructure, things that have been in place for as long as we've known them to be, and think about how we could change them. I mean, look at what all these people sort of sheltering in place has done for climate change, right? Yeah. That is a clear lesson. We need to think about universal health care. We need to think about the way we, conscious consumption, what that means for supply chains and fair labor practices. We're seeing such a huge difference in terms of socioeconomies and who's getting COVID and who isn't. We need to think about people of color and indigenous people actually really suffering much more than white people in this country. There's so many things that we could think about in the way that we could possibly do them differently or even better. And that's something really exciting to me, because whether or not we get there, this is the moment to dream big. Why not? We've never had this kind of time. So why not dream everything you wish could be true in the world? Because even if we never get there, at least you have intention once we come out of this to try something new, to point ourselves in a different direction, to have the compass point in a true north, in what's in sort of what's the best way to describe it? True north is in what your heart desires, what
Oh,
your heart desires for yourself and for the world, for your friends, for your family, but much bigger than that. We can think really big. We can dream really big right now and see what kind of lasting impact that has on the world once we're able to kind of, socialize again. Once we are able to kind of be together, it's clearly going to be in a new way, certainly until we have a vaccine. But how we want to treat each other, what we want to do for each other. This is the moment because it's the first time we can all relate to the same thing. And I think it makes it much easier to think about helping not just one person, not just yourself, but lots of people when you can
yeah,
relate to what they're going through.
absolutely. I love that. Thank
That was a
you. You're
long answer. I
no,
apologize.
no, it's a beautiful answer, and you're right. I mean, that's it's a phenomenal answer to think blue sky, like you said, and think about what is the perfect end to this like crazy situation. What could we walk out of this, into,
Right.
something better. And it's not going to be easy, but you're absolutely right. I mean, how are you dealing with this on a day-to-day basis, and how has your mental state been throughout
Yeah.
all of this?
It's really tricky. I go up and down like everybody else. I mean, I certainly feel very much affected by the weather.
Mhm.
I feel like we're highly tuned now to smaller things because we don't have noise and work and responsibilities in the same way right now. Everything's been sort of put on pause. So it's like you hear, you can't get outside your head. You think differently. You feel things differently. So when it's cloudy, I kind of like get depressed. And when it's sunny, I'm like, let's go for a walk. It's
Yeah.
like the best thing to ever happen. But I also feel like I went through a phase where when this first started, I felt an incredible sense of relief because for somebody like me who's kind of confused, not confused isn't the right word, but sort of at a crossroads for what I'm doing professionally and personally, I think that there was this moment of, oh, phew, now nobody can do anything. And I don't have to feel guilty that I'm not like, working 24 hours a day because nobody's able to. And there was that huge sense of relief in a way that I felt like I was on vacation. Like
Mm.
I was drinking and eating whatever I wanted and watching movies and just so like excited to have this pause. The longer it went on, though, I think it really occurred to me like, one, the gravity of this whole thing. At first I was sort of treating it like, it'll be over soon, only to realize that this is like so incredibly serious. We've lost so much life and it got scary. It got really scary. And then there was this moment of, I should be doing something. I should be writing the next great novel. I should be designing a clothing collection. I should.
Mm.
And this idea that you must create magic in this moment will drive you insane. So
I
that started to get tiring in and of itself. But I feel like I went from, ooh, this is great, I'm on vacation, to the world is falling apart, feeling like Chicken Little, like the sky is falling down, to this moment of, well, what am I doing to make everything better? I'm going to regret not having done anything with this time, to realizing that like none of these things are helpful
Yes.
and that being gentle with yourself, particularly right now, is essential for survival. And so, I try to do things that bring me a little bit of joy. There are days when that's just not possible. I said to my girlfriend the other day, like, I don't want to color anymore, and I don't want to read a book, and I don't want to do anything. And
Right.
there there is a part of me that's like, you just have to honor that instead of beating yourself up for everything. But also, just naturally, I think I went from that very lazy stage to now I'm like, oh, I want to exercise every day. Oh, now I want to read this book. Like things naturally come up that are desires rather than forcing desire on myself.
I love it. It's true. I mean, I think a lot of people are starting to feel that pressure. I mean,
I think,
fortunately,
a lot of people went into this feeling that pressure,
feeling that pressure.
and it's exhausting. We put so much pressure on ourselves to begin with, and this is just another way to do that. And look, some people are going to come out of this with like great new careers, or they will have come up with some brilliant idea, but not everybody. And that's okay too. It's this idea that we're forced in this situation to come out with something extraordinary because
Mm.
these are extraordinary circumstances doesn't make sense. That's just not what's happening. And we're not taking into account our mental health. We're not taking into account the fact that there is true trauma here and that there's going to be PTSD after this. And some people are paralyzed, and that doesn't mean they should be doing anything else than just caring for themselves.
Absolutely. And what a time for your podcast. Could be better.
Yeah. Yes. So my podcast is called Could Be Better TBH. And it was the reason that it's called that is like if somebody texted you and said, "How are you?" And you're like, could be better. It's a podcast that I did in conjunction with Crisis Text Line, which is a crisis texting service, 24/7 service. That trained counselors can talk to you if you're feeling anxious, depressed, whatever it is. If you need somebody to talk to and you can't afford therapy and you don't feel comfortable sharing with friends or family, this is a great, great resource. And the JED Foundation, which is about suicide prevention mostly in young people. And sadly, that statistic is getting younger and younger. But in collaboration with them, we came up with this podcast, which was really to talk about mental health in all of its guises and talk to people who have been through things, how they've come out of them, who are going through things, how they cope with them, what sort of the data suggests, what researchers think, and just a lot of firsthand accounting. And partly, that is very important to me because definitely in the last 5 years, and certainly losing my father, I have dealt with grief that is not just grief. I mean, grief is very difficult, don't get me wrong, but I think it's been grief that really sparked depression. And looking back now, I think that I've always sort of had moments of depression. I've had periods of my life and anxiety that I never really addressed until grief became almost unbearable. And so now, talking about mental health, talking about emotional health, it's a little bit, it feels like a little bit, a lot to disclose about me personally, but it's not really different from what I was doing before. I mean, I've never been like a fashion icon. I feel like I'm a fashion counselor. And I talk about clothing in relationship to self-esteem and emotions and the way that we view ourselves. So this is really just an extension of that. It's really just talking about emotional health and mental health without the clothes.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, in terms of authenticity, you are the most authentic person I know. And Stacy London Real
Yes.
handle, and it is the truth. You are real. And I know you off, aside from, all the public forum and I see, obviously what you do in public, and it is truly authentic. Talk to me a bit about that in terms of being in the public eye and sort of having to balance all of that and still be true to yourself. I mean, how you dealt with that?
Well, it's funny. When I first started What Not to Wear, I was very tense all the time about being on camera, right? I was like, I'm an expert. You can't make fun of me. I took myself very seriously. I didn't see any humor in anything. I was like, people are counting on me to be an expert. And I really took myself so seriously. And at the time, I thought that that's what people needed. I mean, the birth of unscripted TV was like, we were looking to people to be experts. And over the course of, since 2002, so we're talking 18 years, we've changed. We've changed as a society. We've changed in what unscripted television is basically scripted television these days. And it's not at all about how to anymore. We were this how to culture. The birth of unscripted television was about how to dress, how to design your bedroom, how to do things. And that's why, the What Not to Wear was on the Learning Channel. We were teaching you things to learn. But that's not where we are now. We've come, and really, I think it's out of unscripted television came the rise of the blogger and then the influencer. But that went from an expert who had at least 10,000 hours worth of experience. I probably have several 100,000 hours worth of experience. That makes no difference in today. And the way people sort of consume fashion or are interested in style has nothing to do with whether people are an expert. It's everything to do with me too. So instead of expertise, it's about shared experience. So if you like somebody who's an influencer, you like their style, it's because it's sort of a self-confirming bias. You like them because they speak to you or your style is similar. And it's a very different way to relate than an expert does to a client or to just, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, a civilian, a non-expert. Expertise is not valued in the same way. I mean, obviously it's something that you want in like a pilot, but when it comes to things like, style, more and more and more people have their own voice. They don't need to be told what to do. They want to share in what to do. And they also, they may have questions every once in a while. They may want advice about certain things, but really it's much more a time for self-expression than it is for any kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like an authority. It's not
Like,
authority.
right, or conforming. It's not,
Conforming.
we're not looking to authorities. We're not looking to
Yeah.
conform. I think more and more fashion and style naturally has become about self-expression. And the way that we want to share that expression is not through experts, but through shared experience. And that's basically sort of both been the trend of a younger generation, but also because of technology and the way that we can all have our own channels. We can all talk to people. There's an immediacy that, you didn't have with television, that you couldn't stream or binge watch, that you only got marathons or, What Not to Wear was on Friday nights. You would wait to Friday to watch us.
Right.
So I think that there's just a difference in the way we communicate, in the way that we use our visuals, in the way that, immediacy has taken the time and effort of expertise away. We don't need expertise because time doesn't matter in the same way anymore. You can literally have anything at your fingertips in 3 seconds if you Google it, if you get on your social media accounts. There's no delay in the way that we express information.
We were just chatting about turning 50.
Right.
And all the expectations.
Which is very different from turning 40.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, not for nothing, but it's like one of those, like, I remember when I was about 35, I realized that like at 30 was great, whatever. It didn't really affect me one way or the other. I was like, okay, fine, I'm 30.
Yeah.
But by the time I was 35, I had this real sense that I hadn't even come into my power, that I was like looking forward to 40, knowing that 40, like everybody was like, oh, 40 is the end. 40 was the beginning for me. 40 was like, I was so sort of, on a roll is the only way I can describe it. Like I felt like I was doing important things. I felt like I was doing good work. I looked better at 40 than I did at 30. I just felt stronger and so much more in touch with who I was as a person. At 30, I felt like I was an amoeba. Like I was just, not self-reflective and really unself-aware. And 40 felt very different. But 50 is different. 50 is harder. I don't look as good at 50 than I did at 40. I don't feel the same kind of purpose and direction. And maybe some people do, but for me, to have this sense of disconnection with myself or where I'm going and turning 50 feels like a powerful combination. We used to be like, okay, you go to school, you get a job, maybe you get married and have kids, you get a promotion, you move to another place, you wind up with the corner office, you retire, you go to Florida, whatever it is.
Right.
But now there is no set path. We don't need offices to work, as we've seen during this crisis. We don't need kitchens to eat food because we can order from every delivery service in the planet. We don't date the same way. We don't meet people at parties or bars. We meet them online. It's just such a different world. And for somebody that, I'd like to think that I've adapted as much as I can adapt without being inauthentic, without sort of, buying into what everybody else is doing just because everybody else is doing it, and being, true to who I am, and also being able to hold on to the things that I do love about the way that I grew up.
Looking at the next phase of life and thinking about, okay, well, this is who's going to take care of us? Like we've been really good about taking care of our parents, and it is a question.
It's a huge question.
And we live in a society that unfortunately they don't take care of the elderly very well. In
Although
this
that's
country.
something that I would like to change. If that is one thing that I have thought about a lot. I think that I mentioned this to you once before, but one of the books that really helped me when my dad was sick was called Being Mortal by Atul Gawande.
I read the same. Oh my God, amazing book. Yes.
Amazing book. So he has established an organization called the Ariadne Group, and they work to create better living experiences for the elderly and the way we treat the sick. We are a busy society. We don't take care of those who can't keep up. We just don't. We don't stop by the roadside to help the people who need us. We just don't. And I don't know whether that comes from this work ethic that Americans have, or capitalism, but people who aren't able to care for themselves either because of chronic illness or because of age, we need to come up with a better system for them. And he is definitely leading the charge in that regard. And honestly, after I finished that book, I was like, I want to work in palliative care. What can I do in palliative care? Because I think we need to create a place where the ill and the elderly feel like they're in a community and not isolated and alone. And certainly our nursing homes are doing nothing of the kind.
Nothing. I mean, my 86-year-old mother is home alone. We're all sort of worried about going to see her. I mean, she has health problems, but it's like, Mom, they cannot walk inside. They can bring you groceries. But they cannot come inside. What do you mean? The elderly, we're like the forgotten people. The elderly, we're alone to begin with, and now we have to be even more alone. And my heart breaks for her because we're all just so paranoid that we're going to make her sick.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And look, I think the fact that what your mom says is true. The elderly are isolated to begin with. Yeah. And in some ways that maybe they are prepared to deal with this, but in other ways I think that it makes them feel even more isolated. And I don't know what the answer to the question is. I really don't. In some ways I think, obviously your mom is very lucky. She's home and not in a home. But I really don't think that again, maybe I haven't thought about this because it wasn't real to me before I was 50 or before my dad passed away, how broken our healthcare system is and how broken, our society is in the way we think about the elderly. We don't respect elders, and we don't, think that they're wise. We don't take them in to live with us anymore. I mean, very rarely. Some people do, but it's not the norm, the way it is in a lot of other countries. And I'm not saying that that's what we need to do. I don't know what the solution is. I just know that as I'm aging, I care about age, and I care about people who are older than me.
You know what, Stacy London, I do feel your best work is yet to come, and I'm so thrilled for you and for all that you're doing. And I just I'm your biggest fan. So
well, likewise, my dear.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just love that you're doing this. I think that this new phase of your life is so exciting, and this podcast is so exciting. And I really do. One of the things that I keep saying, or at least it's sort of been formulating in my head, so I've been talking about it a little bit, is this idea that, turning 50, that you face yourself in a completely different way, right? I think at this stage of life, we know ourselves, we kind of know our strengths, maybe our weaknesses, what we could work on, what we feel we're over, how we want to change things, how we want to pivot. But at the same time, I really do believe this is a complicated moment in life for every woman. But what I think is important for women is that, a lot of the way we internalize how we feel about ourselves is through a male gaze and is through this like kind of societal gaze. And at 50, there's this moment when you just feel like you're broken off from that. And you have to see yourself in a new light. But breaking away from sort of cultural norms is is not easy, and it's also a little bit painful. So, I keep saying we have to have, everybody has this moment of sort of midlife crisis. In fact, I found research that says that women between 45 and 54 are usually the most depressed of any age group of women, because it's the biggest life transition. You're not young and you're not old, quote unquote. You're somewhere in the middle, and your body is changing and your opinions are changing. And suddenly you don't feel as avant-garde as you once did. And you're more traditional because of, just age, time, whatever. I believe that it is a really painful transition. I don't believe it's an easy one. So I believe that there is a midlife crisis that you must have in order to have a midlife renaissance. And it is coming to terms with all of the things that have changed, and having radical acceptance. That is sort of what that crisis is all about. And that is not easy. And I don't claim to have an easy time with it at all. But I believe there is something on the other side of that. And it's why I keep saying that in my 50s, I'm really just trying to figure this shit out. So by the time I'm 60, I'm really raring to go.
Yes, I love that. Oh man. But I agree. I agree. I mean, not only, when you're younger, you have to deal with, your hormones on that level. And then you get to our age and it's a whole other set of problems with hormones. And
Whole other set of problems. And from my thing at Joe's Pub that I do not understand why menopause is so difficult. Why can't it just be easy? And why don't we have menopause parties? Why don't I get to register for my menopausal moments? I want to, I feel like for especially, this is something that, why the mood swings, why the weight gain, why the insomnia, why the memory fog? Why can't it just be no, I don't have to worry about having kids now. My body is my own, and then celebrate with balloons
I
and
know.
presents.
And lots of presents. I know. We need, and why isn't there a day of not having a kid day? Why is there a mom
Yes.
and not having, why are we not celebrating Aunt's Day? Or, I mean, why don't we have,
or just not Mom Day?
or just not,
We have Mother's Day. We don't have no mother, not Mother's
we
Day.
have not Mother's Day. Why not? Because it's
Well, again, these are all traditional roles, right?
yeah,
And I think that one of the things that, at least one of the things that I do think is truly happening, and also is a product of technological communication, is that people who felt marginalized or felt othered, have been able to find their communities and have been able to be much more vocal than they were before.
yeah,
And so conversations like the one that we're having about why aren't there these things? Why aren't we celebrating women at a certain age? Why aren't we celebrating? Those platforms and those women are literally banding together to talk about this stuff. And it's the same in regard to a lot of different things. But that's why I think whether it's a podcast or you're following certain people on social media, it's a place to feel seen. It's a place to truly connect, even if it's virtually. It's to have somebody understand you. And so, you and I have so many things in common, but this isn't necessarily a conversation I would have with somebody else. It's one that I know I can have with you, and women like us will gravitate towards that.
yes, absolutely. Community. Yeah, for sure.
Community is important. It's important. And I think that, this idea of alone together is complicated, but there is a lot of good that can come out of a online community and online platforms and social platforms, as well as the need to connect with people in real life and, to be able to create your tribe. I think it's super important at any age. And, if nothing else, that's certainly another thing that COVID is teaching us, how precious it is that we get to spend time together. I mean, I'm lucky that I have my girlfriend and my dog and I can hug them. But for people who are alone and who can't get hugs, I just want to give out free hugs as soon as we're allowed to.
Well, I'll be up first in line because
Okay, good.
by myself. But yes, I do agree with everything. And COVID it's shown a light on, your friendships, your relationships with your family, your relationship to your work. I mean, it shines a light on so many issues, on so many things.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot, and you learn who your friends are, really.
1,000%.
Yeah.
I think you not only, it's not even a question of learning who your friends are. It's very funny. I saw Gary Janetti posted this thing on Instagram that said, COVID has basically taught me the people that I know I never need to see again in my life. Like, it sort of eradicates the unnecessary.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually pretty important. I think that being able to eradicate a lot of noise and a lot of unnecessary mishigas that we, kind of concern ourselves with all the time, um, this strips that away. And I think it makes us look a lot harder at where we are and what we want. And again, and like what could possibly come out of this rather than, it's back to usual. There is no normal. I mean, there's no old normal, right? It's not like things are going to go back to any form of normal that we've seen before. And I think that means that we are going to have to adjust priorities. And this is, again, the perfect time to do that. It's not necessarily saying that all of your values are different, but what would you want to change if you could change it? I mean, now is that moment in the world where it's actually possible.
It is possible. Well, I'm excited. I love that you said that, and I feel like this is definitely the subject of the podcast and the message. That is, you can change your life and you can change the world. And like what you said, think about it. You have the time to do it. Take time away from your family if you can. Try to meditate. Do
Yeah.
something. Sit with yourself.
I think that's really hard. I think that for a lot of people, we give that advice to people even in their daily lives, right? Even before COVID. But this is an unprecedented opportunity. And so it's not, yes, for stress and mental health, absolutely. Do the meditating, dance, to your favorite songs, watch your favorite show, hug your dog, whatever it is. But those are things that we would also tell people to just, find gratitude in every day before this happened. I think that this is bigger. This is, all of those things still apply. But on top of that is the possibility of thinking bigger. And it's not just about like, centering yourself, it's actually allowing for big thoughts, not just thoughts that are about getting quiet and hearing your own voice. This, in a way, is almost like, yes, hear your own voice, but apply it to a much bigger standard. And I don't know, I mean, chances are we'll have a vaccine and eventually this will be a moment that we talk about that happened in history. But because of that, I feel like this is so singular and unprecedented. Our approach to what our life looks like after this should be just as singular and unprecedented. And I don't know what that looks like for everybody. I just think that it's possible.
Oh, for sure. Thank you. You're right. It is possible. You're.
Ah!